All right. So we have a twist in the tariff story, a shocking twist. Art of the deal, as the influencers are saying now.
Yeah, that's the art of the deal. What a road we've been down over the last week. Remember that? All those days ago? It's Liberation Day in America. This was April 2nd when Donald Trump announced his full raft of tariffs on 180 different countries, with a base tariff of 10% for everybody. As people started to complain and hem and haw about it, he stuck to his guns. Only the weak will fail. He truthed out. Is that what you say? Truthed out? Big business is not worried about the tariffs because they know they are here to stay, but they are focused on the big, beautiful deal, which will supercharge our economy. Very important. Going on right now. But as it turns out, a lot of big business interests and financiers were worried about it. Bill Ackman wrote a whole memo on X about this. This is the money shot. The president has an opportunity to call a 90-day timeout. It's almost like these people tell him what to do. Negotiate and resolve unfair asymmetric tariff deals and induce trillions of dollars of new investment in our country. If, on the other hand, on April 9th, we launch economic nuclear war on every country in the world, business investment will grind to a halt, consumers will close their wallets and pocketbooks, and we will severely damage our reputation with the rest of the world that will take years and potentially decades to rehabilitate. What CEO and what board of directors will be comfortable making large long-term economic commitments in our country in the middle of an economic nuclear war? So doesn't look like big business was not worried about the tariffs. We can say that Ackman represents a lot of the points of view of big business, even within his own party, facing rebellion, and this is ongoing actually. 7 GOP senators sign on to bill to check Trump's trade authority. Now, what Trump is doing right now, invoking an economic emergency that they date as having started in 1935, is clearly illegal. If you actually had a Senate and a Congress willing to exercise its powers, they would be able to shut this down. And even with a mostly complacent Congress, some of them are trying to shut it down. No, presidents can't, just like kings, impose tariffs except in an emergency, which when you're starting your argument at 1935, by definition, you're not talking about
Right.
an emergency. So what he's doing is illegal, but laws only really count if someone's going to enforce them. And the people whose job it is to enforce them are not going to do it, although there are a few renegades, as you can see. Even the podcast set, though, started to get a little nervous. Joe Rogan, Dave Portnoy, and Ben Shapiro are among Trump backers now questioning tariffs. You know why? Because they're all rich motherfuckers. That's
Right.
what we keep
Yeah.
telling you, man. Rogan, wait, you think Rogan doesn't have millions and millions of dollars in the stock market, in the bond market? So now Trump, unlike a lot of politicians, especially his age, recognized the influence of podcasters and really ran the kind of podcast strategy for his campaign. So I don't think he didn't notice that. He does pay attention to those things. Be cool. Everything is going to work out well. The U.S. will be bigger and better than ever before, trying to chill everybody out. But you know who wasn't listening? The bond market. Now, many smart people are saying, and it looks pretty conclusive, this is what changed his mind. They rewrote this article. It's a little Orwellian, the way you can go back and rewrite articles that are printed online now. So I had to go back to, because I tweeted this or I texted this to Keaton yesterday morning. I said, yo, man, this is the shit. This is serious. This is going to scare them. Bonds crater, 10-year yield spikes briefly above 4.5% in confounding move that's worrying Wall Street. Okay, so yields are inverse to purchases. The less people purchase, the more the interest rate goes up because the Treasury is not in demand. Now, normally when you have a stock market crash, people flood into the bond market for safety. They buy treasuries. They put money into the dollar as a safe haven. The fact that you had a crashing market and a spiking bond yield, that means that the dreaded day that all of our creditors start not buying our treasuries had come. And that is probably what made them change course. So that morning, more on this later too. This is a great time to buy EJT. And later on that same day by 1:18, I think he sent that out about 9:30, like right when the markets opened. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I love that sign off.
Yeah, it's his new sign off.
He's been using lately. Okay. So
very professional. You like it?
Very professional, very, very business-like. So, hey, the tariffs are here to stay. The tariffs are here to stay. The tariffs are here to stay. That morning, he says, hey, good day to buy. A few hours later, he lifts the tariffs except on China. So this is what Scott Bessent, part of what he had to say about this.
How much of this decision was driven by the bond market cratering overnight?
I am nothing that says that. And we actually had quite a good 10-year auction today. And all this was, again, this was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors, and we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message.
Translation.
I meant to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the story Bessent went with. Apparently, Donnie Boy didn't get the message. When he was asked about it, he had a different view.
Morning saying be cool, and just a few hours later, there was a pause put in on the tariffs. Can you walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know. They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions. Because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it.
Okay, so
a bunch of Jews calling me up. They were spitting out their pickles. They would say, "What the hell are you doing, Donald?"
I said, "Calm down. Put mustard on your rye." Yeah. So Bessent says we meant to do that. Trump said, "Nah. Yeah, they were getting yippy. We had to back off." So this is commentator. What's his first name? Mike Gasparino?
That sounds right. I don't know.
spilling the beans on what really happened based on his sources. And now there's been other reporting on this. It's pretty well confirmed. It's the bond market that spooked them.
Let's be clear what happened.
Charlie.
Who capitulated here and why?
Charlie.
And, I don't want to say this because I'm a patriot. I'm an American. But it is the White House who capitulated based on everything I hear and all my sources. And the reason why is because of the bond market and what happened last night. Bessent knows this better than anybody. When you have yields on the 10-year rising to 5%, stuff starts shutting down. When you have the lending markets screwed up. By the way, who was dumping the bonds? Somebody asked them if it was China, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't. It was Japan. While he was negotiating with Japan, according to my sources, who are running major money management firms that are involved in the bond market, without giving up names, Japan was dumping bonds because they believed this was not a great place to do business. That forced their hands. Now, what you can say, I think, legitimately here, is Trump decided to take the win. And here's why. There was overwhelmingly, deal potential here among the entire world, except for maybe China, right? Everybody really wanted something. So he did take the win, but make no mistake about it. Peter Navarro was talking as of yesterday about not taking the win, and now they did. And it's all because of the bond market. I want to point out.
All right, and that's another interesting point. It looks like Navarro's star has sunk and Bessent has risen. Because from what we hear coming from sources and insiders, is that Navarro is the maniac who just wants to shove it in the world's face and let it play out. Whereas Bessent is a George Soros guy. He's more of a professional, for what it's worth. And according to reporting, particularly that came out of the Wall Street Journal today, Bessent the whole time was trying to persuade Trump to handle it this way. And it looks like now Trump is going to let Bessent take the lead. So Glenn commented on this video. Bill Ackman was the first to demand a 90-day pause. Then Jamie Dimon publicly spoke out. Other billionaires did privately. Then the bond market got threatening. Presidents are and always have been limited by the oligarchical class. That's why they benefit most from U.S. policy. Botcha is going to have to rewrite all of her planned monologues for the rest of the week. Michael Tracy, LOL. The Main Street versus Wall Street rhetoric was fun while it lasted. April 2 to April 9 will make for an interesting time capsule. Tweeting over the headline, Trump watched Dimon interview on Fox before deciding on tariff pause. But Bill Ackman, hey, he wants to stay in the club. This was brilliantly executed by Donald Trump. Textbook art of the deal. I was with you guys the whole time. And our friend Blakely actually responded to that. You're literally doing the meme.
Yes.
I'm adding tariffs. This will create jobs. I'm removing tariffs. Art of the deal. I'm adding tariffs. This will create jobs. I'm removing tariffs. Art of the deal. Yeah. Scott Bessent, this was actually truthed by Donald Trump in spite of the fact that he acknowledged that people were getting yippy, and that's why he backed down. That's never been an impediment to Trump saying completely the opposite the next day. So he truthed out Bessent, once again asserting this was the plan all along.
Successful negotiating strategy that President Trump implemented a week ago today. It has brought more than 75 countries forward to negotiate. It took great courage for him to stay the course until this moment. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they're in this very spot, do not retaliate and you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff for them, and China will be raised to 125 due to their insistence on escalation. I'm not calling it a trade war, but I'm saying that China has escalated, and President Trump responded very courageously to that. It signals that President Trump cares about trade and that we want to negotiate in good faith. And as I said, each one of these is going to be a separate, bespoke negotiation. So we are confident that, having seen the other side of where this could go, and it was like I said last week, the market didn't understand. Those were maximum levels. The countries can think about those levels as they come to us to bring down their tariffs, their non-tariff trade barriers. We're going to discuss currency manipulation, subsidy of labor and industry.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more
How much
about
of this decision
what the overall strategy is here. It's not what they're telling people, but it's also not what MSNBC would have you believe. These guys just no, it's that they have a plan. It doesn't really have a lot to do with helping the working class, but it does have a lot to do with maintaining the hegemony of the U.S. and particularly maintaining the dollar as the world's reserve currency. There is a plan. We're going to cover that in a later segment. In terms of China, there's a lot of reporting on this regarding what China can do in retaliation. Obviously, they're holding a lot of our treasuries. Would they actually dump the treasuries? We talked a little bit about this the other day. When you're dealing with Donald Trump, you never know. If you escalate to that point, Trump could turn around and decide the U.S. should default on its debt. So they could wind up cutting their own throats. They also hold a lot of mortgage-backed securities that they could dump to impact the U.S. housing market if they want to do something at a lower level. However, some of what Besant has been saying about how out of balance their economy is, in the sense that they don't have a consumer-driven economy. They have an export-driven economy, so they can't really fall back on increasing internal consumption. They just don't have a consumer society like that. So then you have the question of sending the exports to other countries, but Europe is struggling itself, and these other countries in Southeast Asia are trying to develop their own economies. The last thing they want is for China to dump a bunch of cheap goods on them. So there you just come to the question, is the will of the Chinese government such that they're just going to ride that out, whatever the impacts are on their economy? The idea that what Besant says from the research that I've done, that they won't really be able to trade their way out of it, seems like it's probably true. We'll do something more extended about the China element of this on Sunday. But based on all of the reporting that's out there, this was not the plan. And actually, this broke while I was working on this. The Wall Street Journal dropped an article, why Trump blinked on tariffs just hours after they went into effect. Treasury Secretary helped persuade the president to take time to negotiate with trading partners in the face of pressure from business leaders. Trump privately acknowledged that his plan for tariffs could push the U.S. economy into a recession, but he wanted to avoid a depression, the Wall Street Journal reports, citing people familiar with his conversations. Trump had lunch Wednesday with legendary investor and brokerage founder Charles Schwab, the Journal reports. While many economists were starting to predict a recession from Trump's original plan for sweeping global tariffs, none of them were saying it would lead to a depression. All right, so apparently we're going to get into the insider trading element of this a little later. The idea that this was his plan all along, based on all the reporting we've seen, that's BS. It does look like he made this decision that day. It does look like it was made largely under pressure, partly from his Treasury Secretary, partly from Besant, but also from all of these oligarchs like Ackman who were laying the pressure on him. And it looks like the bond market was the thing. That was the thing that made him think he was going to cause a Great Depression and get blamed for it.
Well, yeah, things were going too far downhill too fast.
Right.
Right. There was no way that they could conduct the kinds of negotiations that they wanted to conduct with things spiraling out of control here the way they were, because with each passing day of the market just imploding, people's retirements just evaporating,
Right.
public sentiment turning against them, not only is that bad politically for Trump, but it also weakens greatly the United States' leverage in whatever negotiations they're looking to conduct, right? And I believe that it was a mistake to put these on in the first place, because I think countries got a taste of that. And, Scott Bessent says, well, now they've got a taste of what this will look like at its worst. Well, so did we. I mean, so did we. We got a taste of what it'll look like at its worst, too. And the people don't want this, obviously. All these claims about how, we're going to have jobs. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, we already covered that. The idea that there is infrastructure in place to sort of insulate us from the consequences of this is just absurd. The idea that it's a year and a half away is absurd. I mean, that's just laughable on its face. So, yeah, everybody got a taste of this, including us. And so I don't think this strengthens us moving forward. I think it was a mistake that he had to undo before things became irreversible. And so he did it. He caved. He caved to save face. This was a pretty big L at the end of the day.
And also to point out, even on the face of it, what Bessent is saying about the other countries held their fire, that's not true. The Europeans just announced a 25% tariff that they were going to hit us with.
Right.
So why don't you keep the tariffs up on them? Now, the idea that maybe they can make lemonade out of these lemons, because as I say, China is not in a great position overall. Maybe they can, but this was not the way they originally conceived this playing out. Yeah, China's in a tough spot, but as you point out, so are we.
Of course.
If you assume, though, that they don't really give a shit about workers, this is really about preserving American hegemony and preserving the strength of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, while at the same time weakening the dollar. Again, we'll get into this a little later. They might be able to accomplish that. It's not going to do anything for the average person, particularly in light of the draconian cuts they're making to the social safety net at the same time.
Right. Indeed.
Please clap.